ask the board to come to order, and I understand our remaining member is going to get here shortly, but we'll go ahead and start if you call the roll. Here. 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 Great. Welcome, everyone. We'll start with approval of minutes from our last meeting, which was May 27th. Does anyone have any additions or corrections to the minutes?
Nope.
Not,
Move
then a
approval.
motion and a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. We don't have to do a roll call on the minutes, do we? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Minutes are adopted. Okay, now, let's move to that public comment period. Do we have some folks signed up to speak this morning, this afternoon? None? Okay. So then action item number one.
Action item number one. The first four action items are all additional rules. I broke them into 4 resolutions, so we lumped what the rules are together. So the very first rule, if you look behind it, it's a huge stack of housekeeping changes that we've made. And they're all, we use sort of a definition of what went into here. So anytime we corrected spelling or grammatical mistakes, it did not change the intent of the provision. Correcting some cross-references between documents, changing the name of bureaus to be consistent, spacing and pagination and capitalization is what this tends to be. We had my staff look at this. We had the 2 liaisons look at this, try to take it from a member viewpoint to making sure they didn't have any issues with it. And of course, the city attorney's office looked at it. There's nothing here exciting to look at, so that's
Okay.
my discussion.
And assuming there's nothing exciting to look at, I assume we have no one signed up to testify. Okay. Therefore, then, should we go ahead and take a roll call on each of these in turn, or what do you want to talk about?
Each of these in turn, because there may be discussion points on them.
Okay.
That's why I broke them up.
So then let's take a roll call on item number 1, Resolution 491.
Aye.
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 Aye. And then number 2, is there any particulars to that one that you want to talk
This
about, Sam?
one is what we're asking for. As you've noticed, we've been coming to you a lot with housekeeping changes.
Right.
And what we've done here is if you look, there's a discussion or presentation document in here that I've outlined some of the issues with it. We just keep presenting that, and as we go through, we're going to find more housekeeping. And so what we're doing is defining housekeeping. I want to have a rule that defines the housekeeping. And then if I agree that these rules are that meet the definition of housekeeping, both liaisons agree and the city attorney's office agree. So it has to be unanimous agreement between 4 parties that these are housekeeping, that you are giving us the authority to make those changes without bringing them to the board and without publicly posting them. And I will go through the process of notifying you and posting and notifying them publicly that they've been changed. And you do have the right, if you want to reverse or what I call rescind any of these changes going forward. So this just allows us to move ahead and not keep giving you huge packets of changes as we go forward. So that's what this one is. So we were just asking for the authority to do that. And just a little bit of background, the city of Portland allows the city auditor's office to make some of these kind of changes to the city code. And the state of Oregon allows their agencies to make housekeeping changes without public notice or hearing. So there is precedent set both locally and in the state allowing housekeeping changes to be done without the formal process. So that's what we're asking for, is you allowing us to do it as per the wording in the rule.
Right. Okay. Questions for Sam on this? And did anyone sign up on this one? So yeah, it looks to me like you've threaded the needle between where the board ought to be exercising discretion and oversight, and where it is a ministerial matter. So I like the way you've constructed this. Any further discussion before we vote on this? Roll call then, please. Aye.
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 Now, 493.
493, what I wanted to do was take a resolution that you approved last time, 490, which is empowering me, the fund administrator, to make expense payments, benefit and expense payments. And I wanted to move that into the rules, just so we had it located in an easy to find place. And one of the things I found coming into this job, sometimes it was hard to figure out all the powers that were vested to the director. And I wanted to try to compress all those to, most of them are either in the charter or in the rules. So that's all I'm doing is moving this into the rules.
Okay. And no, little financial impact, if any, right?
Yeah, there's no none of these have had any financial impact.
Right, okay. No one signed up?
I have a question on this. So on Exhibit A, board procedures, is that what you're talking about there, 5.205?
Yes.
So since we've kind of got away from monthly meetings, it says the fund administrator will provide the board with a monthly summary of expenditures at each board meeting. And for example, this summer, we didn't have a board meeting for 3 or 4 months. I think it would probably be better that you would provide us with the summary as it was done, no matter, after it's done, just send us a notification, an email or something that would let us know something was changed and we can respond back. That would be easier for me, rather than address it 3 or 4 months later.
Okay. Should we change the rule for that or leave the rule in here and make that just sort of administrative process? What's your feeling? Okay. We could leave it up to you how we can make that administrative, that we do that, or we can change the rule and just strike the last 4 words at each board meeting, so we just give you a monthly
Yeah, that would be fine.
Want to do that?
Okay.
I just, so I hear
in your resolution, if you could
Yep.
put that in there, strike.
I
the
hear
words.
a consensus on that we'll just delete the last 4 words, and so therefore you'll provide the summary on a monthly basis, but it depends on whether it's live and in person because we're having a meeting or by mail or electronically if not.
And if there's nothing changing, nothing has to be sent out, so it's only if something's changed, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, good. All right, no one signed up on this item either? So that amended version of 493 then, roll call on that?
Aye.
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 Aye. And 494, pre-existing income.
Okay, this, we've had a series of discussions starting in January, or not January, but June of last year, and we're trying to bring those last series of things done on how we do wages, offset of wages. So what I'd like you in this time is direct you, we have a presentation of the board document that I put together. I want to walk you through that because there's a couple points in here that I'd like you to see because it clarifies some of the issues of what we've heard, and then we also have some rule changes to go along with it. So the first thing I wanted to address was rental income. There was a lot of discussion, is rental income considered an offset from wages or is it not? So if you look in the discussion, I will admit to heavily plagiarizing this from the IRS. I thought that says this fairly well. So I'm going to probably read it verbatim here just so you see it. If the member is receiving any payment for the use or occupation of property, example, renting out his or her house, half a duplex, office space in an office building, then it is generally treated by the IRS as rental income from real property and not self-employment income. So if somebody falls into that category, I put into bold, Fpdr procedures are, Fpdr does not consider rental income from real property as wages earned in other employment. So if somebody has a condo that they're renting or a house that they are renting, with some exceptions which will come in a minute, we will consider that rental income from real property and not self-employment. So we will not offset that rental income. We have not been doing it, but this is just to make it clear that that's the process. I did confirm this with other agencies and companies. This is pretty much the standard approach that they use too, and this is how this is IRS wording here. Then, and the IRS goes on to say, however, rents received from the use of or occupancy of hotels, boarding houses, or apartment houses are included in self-employment income if the rental owner provides services to the occupants. Type of services that would trigger the reporting of rental income as self-employment under the IRS rules are services that provided for the occupant's convenience, for example, maid service. If it is not the type of service that is if it is the type of service usually provided in connection with a room rental, then it would not be trigger reporting. So if you're providing heat, electricity, cleaning of public areas, trash collection, general maintenance, that's considered part of the normal cost of doing business on a rental. And I'll give you some examples in a minute if you have. So therefore, when rental income is considered self-employment by the IRS, Fpdr will consider it self-employment income and treat it as wages earned in other employment. In short, we're going to trust that the member and their tax specialist are interpreting the IRS rules correctly and coding their rental income correctly. If it's just from general income, we won't offset it, but if a portion or all of it is considered self-employment on how they fill out their tax form, we will offset it. So our default is to look how they completed the tax form, and we're going to make the assumption that they are in compliance with IRS regulations. I think this is a big concern of how we would treat rental income, and so this is how rental income will be treated. So just general renting out a house will not be offset from us unless, and again, here's some examples of what could lead to self-employment. A bed and breakfast, well, you're probably providing maid service and a breakfast, so you may have all or a portion of that income be self-employment. Airbnb, just what the city approved, renting out single rooms in a residence could be considered self-employment, depending upon what services they provide the renter. Senior assisted living, you rent out a house to some seniors, and once a month you go and help them clean the house. You maybe grocery shop for them, you do some welfare checks for them. That could trigger self-employment income. And adult foster care, which is the most extreme, where you are actually providing hands-on care of particular people. So any questions on how we're handling rental income moving forward?
Sam, in your thinking, this is no change whatsoever in current practice?
Correct. I mean, we clarified it in current practice, but it was never our intent to really start deducting some rent from a single house that a person had.
So a disabled member has a nest egg, and after being out on a service disability, purchases 4 or 5 duplexes and rents them all out and does nothing more than, normal owner maintenance. Even though that's likely providing more income than when at work, it's still not going to be an offset.
As long as it's considered by the IRS as income from rental property, not self-employment. So we're going to default to how they completed their tax form. But in short, the answer to your question is yes, we will not offset that.
Other questions, board members? I assume we probably do have some.
Well, we have some more. That's only half of this particular resolution.
My gut is we ought to take these separately.
Yeah.
I think
This
Part
is-
A and Part B are very different beasts.
Okay, but let me finish on Part A, because there's one, we did make some changes. If you look in there, there is part of it to 5701 and 5801 definition of wages from other employment. It's on page 2 of my proposed rule amendments. We clarified the wording. That's no change in intent, but when we looked at it, nobody could pronounce it. It was a tongue twister. So we reworded it, and you can see my brackets. That's what it says. That was always the intent of that language, just that when we first wrote it, it didn't come across clean. So that's all the changes in under wages of other employment. That change was to make it readable, so it's not a substantive change. It just happens to do with that.
Okay.
That's the first part.
Sam, I have a question on that sentence, pre-existing income, or that definition. Your example,
Existing income is on the next one. That is,
did I jump
what
ahead?
I want to do is refer you to the presentation document on page 2. I've tried to isolate the differences between the two components. So the rental income on page 2 of the presentation document shows the changes that we made in response to rental income. And that is not a change from anything. It is just we had some extremely poor wording and wanted to restate it so it read clearly. The intent is no change to intent at all with that change.
Okay, makes sense. So you think we should take testimony on this? Do we have some? No one signed up to speak on this. Okay. So you want to discuss this a little further, Jason?
I was going to propose that we split these into 2 resolutions, Mr. Chair, Sam. I think there might be more discussion and public input on the other income.
Disability piece?
And the pre-existing, so you want rental and pre-existing?
Yeah, that would be my preference, if that's okay with the other trustees. And do we have testimony signed up for the second part of this?
So let me clarify, because really the only change we're making to rental is the clarification language on the bottom of page 2 in my presentation document.
Right.
So that's all you want to vote on first is just that clarification change.
Yes, if that's acceptable to everybody, I would move the proposed amendments to Rules 5.701 and 5.8.01.
Okay,
Separately.
Second on that?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yes, I just need clarification, I can't
We're
figure out
just-
what you're actually asking here.
So, Trustee Lehman, we're looking here at page 2 of 5.
Yep,
It's right up.
I'm on there.
Before we move to 3 of 5, which is about other earnings and how much is offset from the benefits, I was proposing we try to separate them because I don't think the first one is controversial at all on the rental income.
Okay,
I'm fine if you want to power through and
No,
try to
that's
vote on
fine.
them all at once. I just think it'd be easier.
Okay, so we're going to take the roll call on those first two, if everybody's clear on what's on the table here, 5701, 5801. Okay? Roll call.
aye.
Aye.
Aye?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now we'll talk about 5813.
So on, again, the document, the presentation document, we are walking through pages 3, 4, and 5 of that document right now, dealing with, under the heading of pre-existing income. The issue that we had with this was prior, well, up to now, and until we make this rule change, Fpdr offsets 100% of any income you receive while you're disabled, even if you had that income prior to your disability. And I sort of called that pre-existing income is what the term has been used in our meetings before. So if you had some type of, what do I have here in my example, a graphic designer who earns who's been earning $500 a month doing some website work consistently, and now we would offset that full $500 after they become disabled, even though they had been earning it before. What we had done some research is, and you'll look in the bottom of page 3, both the state workers' comp and I have an OAR, they say that they only consider the increase in earnings after disability as being offset. So, and again, you'll see some examples here in the back. Let's say they now start earning $600, they would only use the $100 as the offset amount. I talked to Standard Insurance Company who handles the city's LTD plan. They are the same thing. They only offset the increase in work or work earnings after they become disabled. That is pretty much the standard throughout the country, both for LTD and workers' comp. You only offset the increase in earnings after disability starts. So our attempt with this rule is to bring us in line with what most other plans do and offset only the increased amount. So that's our intent with the rule here. So we'll walk through the changes that we're proposing to it. So we have some additional new definition also under 5701 and 5801 for pre-existing income. We're just trying to define that term. And that means the gross salary, overtime pay, fees, commissions, and other remuneration and self-employment income a member earned prior to disability and that the member continues to earn while receiving benefits. So we would just have any questions on that particular term of how we're trying to define that. Then we added, and it's for, I'll hit the 5712, so this is for service-connected. Guideline for wage offset says that pre-existing income will be included when calculating wage offset from the disability benefit when the pre-existing income earned during the period of disability exceeds the pre-existing income prior to the disability.
Sam, that's where I had a question. Shouldn't that read only to the extent of the excess? I mean, we're not going to offset the entire pre-existing income, only if it's greater than, and only to the extent that it's greater than.
See what you're saying here. Okay, the way this words it will offset it. So we're going to only offset the increase. Anybody a good wordsmith of where to insert that wording? I see what you're saying.
The earned during the period of disability exceeds the pre-existing income prior to the disability, comma, only to the extent of the excess, if any. Something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm
More
trying
attorneys
to
are-
think if there's another
It's
way to
the-
word
it's
that,
the
but that
increase in pre-disability
increment or
income.
increase, yeah. Yeah, and that only the extent is seems a little vague. It's the increment of increase. I'm not sure if there's a less technoid way of saying it than that. But
All of our lawyers.
I'm not a lawyer, I'm just making this up. But
Lauren, you got a good idea? 'Cause we're looking at that.
Well, the lawyer's here.
Every single one of them is looking down.
Any thoughts?
Darrelly steps up.
Darrelly Bechtold, legal counsel for Fpdr. In rereading this section, I do understand that it is a little bit confusing. I think the use of pre-existing income, the repetitive use of pre-existing income could be tweaked. Just give me a second here. I have to admit that I looked at this language numerous times when it was being drafted, and we tweaked it and came to this one, although I do admit it's not perfect. I think actually changing the first sentence or the first part of the section is probably.
I think you could probably leave that paragraph and then write another sentence after it, which describes what part will be used.
That might be the
So
easiest.
it explains what's happening.
Or maybe the increase in pre-existing income that is earned during a period of disability will be offset.
I'll give you a moment to write that down and then play it back for us.
Well, if you just left that paragraph and then if you just wrote another sentence that said the offset will be anything above the pre-existing income. Or you can probably figure out some better words from that, but I think
just adding the increase in pre-existing income will be included when calculating wage offset from the disability benefit. Might be a more simple way to address. I think what's confusing is when the pre-existing income earned during the period of disability exceeds the pre-existing income prior to disability. I think it's that part that's confusing.
Right.
Sam, while they're doing that, could you talk to us about the fiscal impact of this?
Okay, the fiscal impact, we estimate about 1 to 3 claims a year as to where we actually have a wage offset with it, and we estimated that if we had made this change, potentially it would be less than $30,000 a year. I mean, so it's a very small number of people this impacts, and it's a relatively small dollar benefit.
So in other words, you don't have much in the way of wage offsets today?
No, we
Even
don't.
at the 100%?
I mean, right now, we have nobody with a wage offset, or at least a couple weeks ago, we had
Yeah,
nobody
and
with a wage offset.
in conferring with Mr. Hall, I think there is a way to clarify this language, and we may want to consider tabling it until we can come up with a cleaner provision to put forth.
Want to do that? Is there any reason to not take the time and do that?
No, that's fine.
Could we discuss kind of the
Yeah, let's
philosophy of
discuss
this
what we're
first
trying to
and table
accomplish
a vote
here.
on
Yeah,
it
yeah.
next time? That'd be great. Good. So, my question on this, and I really want input from other trustees, is this is a benefit enhancement that we're talking about adopting by rule. And every time we adopt a rule that impacts benefits in the opposite direction, there's a grievance filed, and we're confronted with statements that it has to be bargained for. So I'd like to get other folks' opinion if this is the direction we want to go until some of the legal challenges are resolved. If anybody has thoughts on that.
Do you know the reason why the IRS That's a pretty tough question to ask, if you know what they're thinking, but is it a legal reason that they're defining rental income different than any other income that you can think of? Lauren, maybe?
What?
Lower income or not?
Ken McGarry, City Attorney's Office, and I'll let Lauren speak too. It's the difference between passive income and active income, I think, is what the IRS is seeking to gauge. So investment income rather than active income, which is not defined as wages. I think that's their goal.
Lauren Downhauer, outside legal counsel from Lane Powell. I agree. I mean, they're after earned income as opposed to unearned income. If it's earned income, then it's subject to Social Security and Medicare and things like that. If it's unearned income, profits, rental income, lease income, royalty payments, it's not something that directly resulted from the fruit of your labor, so to speak. It's more from something else. Something else is generating the income, not you. So
Well,
that's basically the policy distinction between the two.
Right, and the IRS generally gives favorable treatment to investment income because they want people to invest. So that's another one of the reasons.
Thanks.
Okay. So, back to Justin's
Yeah, back to
point.
Justin. If this is it is a change in the benefit, and so why are we allowed to do this in rules versus charter change? I mean, why does it? Every other time something like this comes up, it's charter change.
Is this necessarily, because there are tweaks that we can, I'll let Darrell
Yeah,
ask
I
that.
mean, in terms of being able to offset, I think administratively you can offset because it is contemplated that members will not benefit from being on the disability or receiving disability benefits. So in terms, what this charter or what this rule change is really trying to get at is a member going out on disability and starting to work in another position, thereby potentially increasing their potential for getting injured and also kind of gaming the system. So in terms, it is a built-in deterrent to engaging in activities that could prolong their disability and also prevents them from reaping the benefits of getting another job when they're out on disability. But it does contemplate, or the goal of this provision does contemplate that individuals may have an additional income stream, and so it protects that, but it prevents them from increasing their activities so as to increase the amount of money that they're receiving while they're out on disability. Because when individuals go out on disability, we look at a snapshot of their activities at the time of the disability, and that is factored into the disability calculation amount, so.
And you did say, Sam, you expect this to be infrequently used, right?
We see actually this kind of wage offset from a pre-existing job very rarely. I mean, it's 1 to 3 times a year that we'll see somebody from that doing it.
So that's the other reason, that'd be part of my answer for why this is a reasonable administrative rule change as opposed to something to be bargained. It's not affecting the membership generally, it's affecting only a few particular cases.
And also, too, that we don't bargain any of these.
Well, right, but my question was more oriented at the legal challenges that are working
Right.
their way through right now. And, just kind of on a philosophical level, should we wait until those are resolved before we make benefit changes in either direction? Or do we continue to soldier on as good little trustees?
I mean, we can do additional research. I know Mr. Hutchison has looked at what is standard in the industry, and having been at Standard, I also understand that this is a common practice, although it doesn't, we haven't looked at it from a legal standpoint in terms of rendering a legal opinion on the practice, although understanding that it is a common practice and something that Fpdr has sought to do in the past as well.
To that point, it is a standard now in the industry, but it's a newer standard. I mean, Sam, when you were in the private benefits industry, other income was offset.
Well, other income is offset, but it was pre-existing
Percentage.
other income. we were doing something similar to this at Stanford for 20 years. There was a lot of court cases that further defined what could and could not, but this is the direction that everybody's going. And again, if you look in the OARs for workers' comp, it's pretty
This
straightforward. It's
parallels workers'
well-defined
comp now, yeah.
with it. So, I mean, we're paralleling what's there.
I was confirming, I think your statement is accurate, that this is the norm now. It
Yeah.
just hasn't been the norm on private disability plans for that long of a time.
Sam, we don't have anybody currently with an offset, is that correct?
Okay.
Okay, but we have had in the past, so my question,
That have had pre-existing income? Because I think we had just checked, as of the last couple of weeks, we have not
well,
had anybody.
my
with
question would be, I guess,
pre-existing
if we
income offset.
approve this, are we obligated to go back and adjust people who had an offset in the past?
I would say this is, from this date forward, is when it's enacted, is what we look at.
Should say that then,
I think it should say that, otherwise we'll.
Okay, so when we
when we
represent,
revisit,
we'll
look at
include that wording in there.
Okay, that's a good point. Okay, any other guidance for our staff while they go take this back and revise it and bring it back at the next board meeting? Is that
Yeah,
right?
November, next board meeting, we'll have this on board.
I'd
Okay.
just like to kind of respond to Justin. So I understand what you're saying, I appreciate your concern, but I think we can as a group come to some conclusions and decide some stuff here, if we all agree. I mean, if you don't agree, I understand that too, but I think some of the stuff I think that's been challenged has been pretty big stuff. Some people might think it's big, I think it's reasonable. I did want to ask, so I noticed every one of them used the amount of $30,000. Is that some kind of benchmark?
Yeah.
Like a threshold, that if it goes above that, it's,
The statement of rulemaking, this was that had the fiscal impact. This fiscal impact applied to all four of these. So it was a single fiscal impact statement that applied to all four of the rule sets.
But where does the 30,000 come from? Is that?
Well, the 30,000 in here, because the 30,000 applied only to this particular one, because it says 5712B6 and 5813C7, which are these exact two changes. That's the only place that has a 30,000.
Oh, okay.
But we did use the same rule impact that applied and
So the 30,000 is an estimate of,
is only solely for this one.
and therefore
As
just
noted.
washed over under the other one says them too.
We just used a generic one that applied to all of them, but if you look at it, it says very specifically that 30,000 applies to 5712B6 and 5813C7, which
Okay.
are these two
Okay, I get it.
paragraphs.
Dan, one more question. So the offset is 50% of wages.
Right.
And so again, if we pass this, it's 50% of any increase would be included,
So
correct?
if they got $100 increase per month, we would only
Right.
offset the
But your two examples of the state of workers' comp and city of Portland are 100%, are they not? 100% of offset of,
No, because this
Any
it
increase?
says they will use 100% of the income and plug it into their formula. That's all I'm saying here. And I'm not certain how their formula takes the wages from other offset.
it's different depending on the contract, but Sam's right. I mean, it's usually a percentage.
okay.
I mean, you want to incent people to go back to work.
Right.
If they can't do the job they're disabled from, I think both disability carriers and us, we ought to incent people to work in some fashion. So I support this philosophically. I just realize this is a change that if it were going the other direction would be contested.
That's all I had.
Any other discussion? So then we'll set this over, this remaining provision of this set of the rules over until our November meeting. Okay. All right, then, let's move on to $495.
Good afternoon, Nancy Hartline, Fpdr Financial Manager. This contract is a companion piece to the disability program audit. The program audit focuses primarily on claims management, doesn't really spend a lot of time looking at how we pay the benefits that are due. So this contract for $13,182 would be a process to look at how we actually make those payments And can we improve the process, making it more efficient?
Okay. Questions about this consulting contract? Or discussion? Anyone want to speak on this item? Yes? Okay, Del, come on up.
Del Stevens, retired firefighter, Portland. I thought that this resolution was referring to the disability study that we talked about in May. Is this a new contract? May I clarify that, please?
Yes,
It is, I think.
new contract, so if we were looking at a particular process that we would like to see if we can improve it, and so we need to bring an outside consultant in to help us do the analysis.
Well, I would like to be able to comment about the study that was authorized in May. And I had no opportunity to do that, and I've got several things I would like to say about it. And this certainly relates to the disability study that was contracted for in May.
Well, does that have any bearing on what we're going to do in this study?
Well, without having seen the directives in this study, I don't know that. I would assume that there must be some relevance. It's all about disability.
Okay, well, why don't you briefly summarize what your concerns are with the previous contract, because you're talking about the previous one.
Okay. Well, my previous discussion was that I felt that, and this was at the last of the meeting in May, that Milliman and Roberts were here, that we should authorize them to expand the study and look at a disability system that would have a tax-protected disability for the members. And I said, they're the professionals, they have the expertise. There's a contract with an amount of $150,000 maximum. And I asked what they expected they would spend, and they said, well, in the past, it's been about $35,000. So there certainly was enough money to cover an additional inquiry. And because there was no forum to discuss that at the May meeting, I couldn't do it. And what I did do is I contacted the firefighter union president and the trustee to ask why that study could not include a protected disability system. I said, they're doing the study anyway, and I said, there's comparisons that are very, very close in their directives, and so it was suggested that I make up a suggested additional directives for that study, and that they could perhaps include that in the study. And we were told at the main meeting that the study was not finalized. It had not been completed. They were still working it out. So it certainly was not a finished product that could not be altered. Anyway, and so I did pass that information on to Mr. Lehman, who's the fire trustee, and he passed it on to Mr. Hutchinson. And I have not received any feedback about what the disposition of that is, but I was told that he would consider that, and they would consider looking at how it related to the rest of the study. And I have a copy of my suggested directives with me today that I'd like to pass out to each member of the pension board, so you can see that it's a legitimate inquiry. May I do that?
Yes, please. Yeah, and again, this one, this contract is a process review, really, rather than a inquiry into different methods of payment. So, thanks, Del.
If you'd like me to read that briefly, I can read it into the record.
Well, that's okay. I don't think you don't need to read it into the record if we've got copies. So we'll put that into the record. And yeah, I appreciate your suggestion, which is this is.
If I may conclude by saying my purpose in this is to have the pension board take serious my request to look at a tax-protected disability system. And no action has been taken up to this point. And I think that perhaps a study revealing the pluses and negatives of such a system could be very helpful in that discussion. And it's not too late to do it. I mean, we've got the ability to expand the study. We've got the funds already allocated for it. Why wouldn't we want professionals to look at the question and come back with the facts so that we can make a determination. It's for the benefit of the member and for the benefit of the city. As I pointed out earlier, there's a potential cost savings for the city on disability because of that. And I think that we're obligated to look at it. It's the proper thing to do. So maybe you want Mr. Hutchinson to answer whether he have decided to include that in the study.
Okay, well, thank you. And we'll take this under advisement. It's a policy change. It doesn't necessarily have to get, if we were to take it up, doesn't necessarily have to get attached onto a current scope of work for a current consultant, but it's one way to do it.
But it's part of the study that's already there, and it's already been allocated, so.
Hear you. Okay, thank you.
And Dale, I did talk to Sam about this, and I apologize for not getting back to you with the answer. And Sam, I don't know if you want to kind of, in a nutshell, because as far as piggybacking it on that other study that was going on, it was beyond that scope, from what I understood.
Real quick, not get into it. The study that you're referring to is a disability or a workers' comp study.
Right.
Only on how the disability claims themselves are being used. There's nothing looking in at how the disability determined in retirement or in retirement. So it's definitely how we calculate, how we determine somebody's disabled, how we determine if somebody, we're managing those claims rate. It was a workers' comp component of the disability, had nothing to do with the retirement. So adding retirement into it would have been a total scope change. And this way this contract is written, we did not have a buffer. It would have had to have probably come back to the board for an additional amount of money. First of all, we need a scope and get it defined, which the board would have to define the scope of whatever study would have to be. But to me, they were two totally separate. One is solely workers' comp, and the other and had nothing to do with any of the retirement or how a disability claim would roll into retirement.
May I answer back?
Just briefly, and then we'll need to move on.
Well, the contract that was handed out at the May meeting talked directly about a comparison between disability systems with other organizations. So it certainly falls under the umbrella of disability. And comparing our system to other systems is what I was getting at. To me, it fits very well. It shoes thumbnails right into the process of a study. And these are not loaded questions. They're very fair questions. They would allow the results to be factored by conscientious, fair-minded people. There's no bias intended at all. I just would like to have honest answers come back so we can evaluate it. That's all.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dale. Thanks. Okay. Anyone else want to speak on this item? Is that it? So, board ready to act on this contract? Separate question from the one that Dell's raised here, but this contract before us. Then roll call on that item, then, please.
Mr. Doherty.
Aye.
Mayor Hales.
Aye.
Mr. Delaney.
Aye.
Mr. Foch.
I'm going to abstain.
Mr. Lehman.
Aye. Okay, it's approved. All right. So I think we are through the action items and ready for, I think, what most people are here for, which is your report. Mr. Hutchison.
Oh, yeah, why don't you hold off here just a minute? Okay, thank you. We're going to make a slight change, so I'll walk through it, and we're going to put something out of order in our presentation. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to present to you sort of an annual report on the state of Fpdr.
Why don't you swing that microphone around so it picks you up into the system? There we go.
I'll sit in this chair for right
You're
now.
fine,
anyway.
you're fine, you're okay.
So I want to thank you all for coming. What we're going to do today is provide you an overview of Fpdr, some key things that have happened this year, some highlights. We'll address some things in the disability program, our pension program, in the finance and administrative portions of Fpdr, and also some of the technology things that we've addressed. We're going to follow the comments after our presentation by our liaisons, Gabe Sampson and Crystal. And I'm sorry, Crystal, I'm not going to try your last name. I mess it up every time. But we are going to have the chiefs come up right immediately after I finish my introduction because they both have to leave. Then at the end, after the liaisons, we're going to have the union presidents, I think Alan and Daryl, will be here to add some comments. So chiefs, do you want to come on up there real quick?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
first?
Who'd like to go first?
I volunteer. My name is Mike Reese. I'm the Chief of Police for the Portland Police Bureau, and I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you today. I want to first preface my remarks by saying that one of my top priorities, Chief, is the health and welfare of the men and women of our organization. And I want to thank you for your service to the city and to the men and women of the Portland Police Bureau and the Portland Fire and Rescue. I wanted to share a positive story, because you probably don't hear enough of those, about the good work that the folks in Fpdr do. We had a situation almost 2 years ago where one of our officers was tragically injured while on duty. It was a catastrophic injury that left him permanently paralyzed and in a wheelchair. Obviously, it required extensive work with the officer and with his family, and I was really proud of the work that Fpdr, their staff, did in reaching out to the family and the officer and working quickly to try and accommodate his needs in the short term as well as the long term, including an extensive remodel of his family's home to allow him and his family to remain in the same home. The end result to that, I just saw the officer a few days ago with the mayor. The officer has returned to work full time, and he has shared with me his thanks also to the staff at Fpdr for their good work. And so I wanted to share with that positive story with you. Out of a tragedy, we can highlight the good work of the staff and also the opportunity to bring somebody back to work in a meaningful way in our organization. And then also to just let you know, we are very pleased to have a new Portland police officer assigned to Fpdr. You'll meet her in a minute. But we are committed to continuing to have a liaison with Fpdr and see this as a positive benefit both to Fpdr and to the Portland Police Bureau. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Erin Jansen's Fire Chief for Portland Fire and Rescue. I really could echo many of Chief Reese's comments. I want to thank both Fpdr, Sam Hutchinson as the new director, for his work as well as the staff, and the work of the board for all of your support for the health and wellness and the ongoing benefits of Portland police and firefighters. Their work out during the course of their duty 24/7 every day serving the citizens of Portland is invaluable, and to keep them healthy, maintain their benefits while they're injured serving the citizens of Portland is critical to the ongoing functioning of the city and the health and wellness of those members. So thank you very much. I want to specifically call out Sam for his work, and as the new director, he is very transparent. He has been very inclusive for any type of policy changes. He seeks input. He is very collaborative, and I know that with our new liaison, Gabe Sansone, who you'll also meet in a minute, he has been very positive and encouraging, and I feel like they are moving forward in making improvements to the system and to the policy. So I think that from our perspective, things are going very well, so we want to thank you.
Yeah, great. Thank you both. Any questions?
I do.
Yes.
For either or both of you, I've been on this board for a long time, and one of the things we've spent a lot of effort and time on is looking at the incentives and inducements to return to work, and also the health and wellness of your active employees. You know, we've got some exercise equipment in the stations. Do you have any feedback for us on either of those? Is there an appetite for more work in those areas?
Well, I certainly think that the situation that transpired with the police officer that was injured is a template for how we can bring people back to work in a very productive fashion and allow them to remain a vital part of our organization.
From the fire side, the light duty positions that we utilize to bring people back before they have actually fully recovered to perform the duties of firefighter is a very positive program, and I think very helpful to keep people engaged and re-engage them as early as possible back into the workplace so they don't become isolated or disconnected. And so that is a really, really important and valuable program. As far as the workout facilities and the ability to support more preventative type actions, I also view that as a very critical link in the health and wellness of our members. And the more fit, I believe that actually our workforce is probably more fit than I have ever seen throughout my career in the fire service. But I believe that there's always more to learn. I mean, people may become more competitive sometimes in their sports, and so there's more information to learn about not only nutrition and fitness, but also maintaining that fitness as we age. Because I believe our workforce is probably, we haven't experienced as many retirements as we anticipated over the last few years with the recession. And so we've also got a higher peak median age. And as you may know, if I may so assume, we don't recover quite the way we used to as we're getting older. And so I think those are more things that we can do to provide more education to our members about flexibility, about core strength, all of which we're trying to do, but to expand on those programs to help prevent injuries from occurring in the first place are always positive.
I tried to speak on behalf of the whole board, but I think it's safe to do so. I mean, we are always open to more ideas. If we can help your disabled employees get back to work sooner or prevent disabilities, just speak up and call Sam, and we're always interested in that. And thank you for the flexibility you guys have shown to date on that.
Yeah, we really appreciate that, and that has not been necessarily well received in years past. So we really appreciate that change and adapting to being more receptive to supporting that preventative side. I think it's really crucial. So thank you.
I think success breeds success, so the case study of this particular rehabilitation and return to work, you know, is well known, of course, in the Bureau and in the community, and each time we were able to do that for a member, you know, and have them be satisfied and happy in their work and getting healthy to the extent that their condition allows them to return to their full performance, that's great, or in this case, to return to a different level of performance but still make a big contribution. And I think those stories and that experience that they'll share with their fellow firefighters or their fellow officers is pretty important stuff within the culture of each of the bureaus. So, you know, that, you know, each time we're able to succeed like that, you know, is really going to create momentum, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on, Sam, to the next part of your presentation.
Group up. So we'll go ahead and get proceeded here. We have Kim, Nancy, and Sherry. They'll each have a section that will introduce themselves when they present their section as we go ahead with it. So I want to click the next slide there for us. What you see here is a new mission statement that the staff had put together recently. When I first got to Fpdr and I read the mission statement, frankly, it didn't enthrall me or motivate me, and I found it rather boring. And it really became apparent after a couple months on the job that the old mission statement really didn't reflect my staff's commitment to and dedication to their jobs and to the members, because they all are very committed to what they do and very committed to serving the members, and I didn't think the mission statement said that. The staff has always prided themselves on their caring service, their fairness and objectiveness in making decisions, and positive relationships they have built with the members and with a lot of the different stakeholders. So I asked the staff, a team of them, to get together and rewrite the mission statement that truly reflected what they believed was the mission of Fpdr and reflected their values within it. And this is what they came up with. And I think it's an excellent improvement before it does convey the message that we want to deliver to everyone. And I'll just read the statement for you here. We deliver peace of mind to our fire and police members and their survivors by providing disability and retirement benefits in a timely, compassionate, and fiscally responsible manner. And so for the next slide here, we have the values. I'm not going to read them, and there's 2 slides of the values. I asked them the same thing: is look at the old values, and do they really reflect what you believe in? And I think Some of the old values they changed some of the wording and they added some new values. But again, it really reflects what they feel, their dedication to their jobs and how they value. And what we'll be doing, go ahead and flip to did you get to the last one? Okay. And what we'll be doing as we move ahead, we will be using these values in the mission statement to validate our future and validate decisions that we're making. If we're making decisions that get us away from these values, we're going to question ourselves. And that's exactly what a mission statement and values do. This really states where we want to go. So this will be used, and I have used it in our discussions as we move ahead. Okay, for the next slide here, we have just a quick program overview of what we have. Pretty straightforward here. We have our retirement system, which serves our FPDR 1 and FPDR 2 members. We have the OPSERT contributions, which is our responsibility to determine and collect the, or calculate the proper payments into PERS for our FPDR 3 members. We have our disability and death benefits, which is a core part of what we do here. We have our finance and administration section. And Nancy can correct me or let me know if I miss anything out of this list. They have quite a few responsibilities. First of all, they assure that our retirement and disability benefits are made timely and correctly. This is one of the, where the process that we're going to check is falls in under this. They also make sure that all our financial statements and the city's financial statements and audits are up to date with the right information, and we support those audits going forward. We have a lot of money moving through, and we are a big part of the city's financial statements, so it's our responsibility to make sure that we're represented correctly and have the right numbers. And they also provide general bureau support for all the functions that we do in the bureau. And the next slide shows you a little bit more of the actual tree of what our bureau looks like. There is a change we had from last year. We had a admin supervisor who had one person underneath them, and as part of the city span of control study, we agreed to eliminate, not eliminate the position, but convert the position to our management assistant. And so that person is no longer a supervisor, so Nancy supervises both the management assistant and the office support specialist, which is the one underneath it. So we restructured it so we didn't have multiple layers of management, especially with one person managing one person. Okay. So let's talk about some of the customer service enhancements we had made over the past year. We had been getting requests for changing when we make the pension payment date, depending upon how the calendar fell, weekends and potentially holidays on Mondays. Funds weren't appearing in people's accounts until up to the third or fourth day of a month. But if they had auto deduction for certain payments so that can't hit the first, they would have to do some cash management there. So we've set up for every month except for January 1, a program to where we'll assure that the money is in their account by the first calendar day of the month. With it. So we made that change at the request of benefits, so they have the money there on the first, just in case there's any auto deductions or any other payments they have to make. We've updated or refreshed our website with it, so I think it is a lot better presentation, more readable, easier to find information on it. We had some complaints that the forms that we had on there had to be printed out to be filled out. We've taken the first step to improve that, and some of our most used forms, they can now type directly into it before they have to print it out. We've not yet gotten to the point where they can submit via the site yet, but we've at least been making some steps ahead, listening to our customers or what they want. Sherry may have a little bit more information on that later. And then the new phone system, again, Sherry will have more information on that later. But the first complaint I had gotten was the phone system, nobody liked it because everybody was greeted with a recording. The recording was too complex, didn't make sense. Everybody pressed one and popped in on one of our person's desk. And so we couldn't manage the calls. People weren't answering. And there was a reason why that phone system had been created, because we had difficulty managing the calls. So we've upgraded the technology, so we have a person answering virtually every call immediately. But the phone system allows us to better manage how the calls are handled on the back end. So we've tried to get both intentions with it. So again, Sherry will talk a little bit more about that, but that has been a big customer hit. They can now get a person to answer instead of that recording. And then for what's new this year, what's happened over last year, we had the two settlements, the pension overpayment and the apparatus operator. So a lot of time was spent over that for several years, so Nancy and her staff worked really hard, and we brought this to a conclusion with this. We have some legislative impacts that came through. It was 822 and 861, the Senate bills addressing COLA and tax adjustment or tax offset benefits here. So the tax offset benefit was eliminated for new and current retirees who are non-Oregon residents. Again, as you know, both bills have been challenged, so they're both in front of the Supreme Court, and we're hoping that we get a decision before the end of the legislative session. Last I heard is there are some people even projecting they won't have it by the next legislative session. So those are going through, so those are some big things. We also had some GASB changes, Government Accounting Standard Board changes. 67 was the one that came through. It's changes on how actuarial liability is calculated. You'll hear more about that in January when we do the levy analysis with you at that point, and that'll show you how that has changed it. And then we have the disability audit program in progress. Again, we're focusing solely on the workers' compensation component here, and they've completed the in-house portion of the audit. They're beginning to pull it together, the results. Sort of the first thing they've heard is they like what we're doing, and we're not seeing any need for any major improvements or changes. But we'll see what that is. Our goal is to present that to you in January, the actual report as well as our reply and plan. Okay.
So very good. I'm Kim Mitchell, Claims Manager with Fpdr on the disability side. And what I'd like to do is just go over some of the highlights of our program, but start off with an update on our interim benefits. As you are aware, the charter was amended to include the provision for interim benefits after the passage of ballot measure 26145 in November of 2012. Effective January 1st of 2013, any member who received a service-connected disability benefit and had filed a complete application for benefits would receive an interim benefit. Since January 1st of 2013, we paid interim benefits to 135 members, and that is the payment that we make while the claim is pending, meaning it hasn't been accepted or denied. So we're evaluating it to determine their entitlement to benefits. So of the 135 members who received interim benefits, 8 of those claims were denied. And of the 8 claims that were denied, 4 were appealed. So the disposition of the claim is not final, so we don't know their repayment obligation at this time. The remaining 4 claims became final as a matter of law, so the members were required to repay the overpayment. Of the 4 claims where repayment was required, 3 have complied with their obligation to repay the overpaid benefit. 1 member has not complied, and because of that, we pursued recovery by filing a claim in Multnomah County, a small claim, and we were granted a notice of entry judgment, which will allow us to proceed with requesting a writ of garnishment from the member's wages. This is a case where this person had been given ample notice of their obligation to repay and just did not do so. So we went through the process of initiating a recovery. As we really work to notify the members about their obligation to repay, in December of 2012, we sent an advisory to all the members just to advise them that this was a change, that they would be getting the interim benefit, but if the claim were denied and became final, they would have to repay the benefit. We also provide notice when we receive, when they sign the disability and line of duty report, which is our claim form, there's a section right under their signature highlighted that says if your claim should be denied, you would have to repay the overpaid benefit. So we also notify them when we get a claim for benefits in. There's a letter that we had sent out historically, which is just to advise them that we received their claim for benefits. And what we've included in that notice is a section about the interim benefit, that if your claim is ultimately denied, you're going to have to repay the overpaid benefit. So we also work with phone contact and use any means that we can to just keep the member aware of their obligation should the need to repay the overpayment occur. So interim benefits as part of our plan is still in its infancy. Given the number of claim approvals this year, 93%, we encounter few claims where repayment is required. So we do expect to uncover opportunities to improve the repayment process as we continue to work through our recovery efforts, as there are some things that are yet unseen about the repayment process. So continue to work through that. So I'd like to go ahead then and proceed on with providing other information about our disability program. Historically, we like to provide you information about the number of claims filed. And in looking at the next slide, you'll see that we have an increase in claims filed this year when compared to fiscal year 2013. About 30 additional claims have been filed this year. And, excuse me, the increase in claims has been noted with the Fire Bureau as opposed to police. The Police Bureau, if you look at the chart, kind of peaked in the number of claims filed in 2010 and has been pretty much on a decline since then, kind of holding steady for the last couple of years. We will talk a little more about the increase in fire claims in another slide, but the overall information here is that we've approved 93% of the claims this year, 4% were denied. The remaining 3% are claims that were either incomplete or withdrawn by the member after they filed the claim. So, given the increase in fire claims, we decided to kind of provide a comparison of the approved fire claims for fiscal year 13 and 14. So if you're looking at the injury type, you'll notice that there was an increase in service and occupational claims for fiscal year 2014 when compared to 2013. So we looked at the claims by injury location, and we note that there was an increase in injuries occurring at the scene of a call or at the fire station. There was a decrease in injuries occurring at the training sites, and the injuries under the heading other than work location usually refer to occupational disability cases.
Can I interrupt? Do we have any idea what's going on with those injuries at the fire stations? That seems kind of a pretty significant increase from one year to another.
I'm sorry.
Do we know what some of the cause issues are in those injuries at the fire stations? That's a pretty big increase from one year to the next.
Yeah, and some of them were during repairs of their trucks or lifting equipment at the station. Various types of injuries. There was no one single thing that we could capture, but a lot of them were.
Surprised at that, given that we just made a bunch of improvements to the buildings. You'd think that the buildings and equipment would be at their safest point. So it's kind of shocking to me to see that jump. So maybe it's just a one-year glitch. Let's hope. Okay, thank you.
So when we look at the body parts, you'll see that the back, knee, and shoulder injuries increased from last year, as did the injuries where multiple body parts were injured during an event. There was a decrease in the injuries to the abdomen and slight increase in injuries to other body parts, which is face, ear, head, etc. When we look at the injury cause, you'll see that the injuries resulting from lifting and pushing and pulling activities were the areas of the biggest increase. And there's also an increase in other causes, and usually this cause is listed when the member has had many events during a work shift and they can't point to a single cause. So they may have been out on several fires a day and notice a sore shoulder or something at the end of the day. It's kind of an effect of everything they've done that day. So that's how that's been coded. So as a result of the increase in some other factors, you'll notice on the next slide that we do show an increase in the time loss and medical expense paid this past year when compared to 2013. To try to get some more insight about the claims and to really look at and see if there were any smoking guns that we could identify as to the cause, I did conduct another review of the cases, and while I didn't find a real smoking gun as far as the cause of of increase. There were some common factors among the claims that contributed to the increase. And many of the high dollar claims involved members who were over 35 years of age. Many were high earners. So the effect of that is that they would receive a higher disability benefit than someone would if they were an entry-level firefighter. Some of the claims for the members were injuries to areas of their body that had been injured before, resulting in a longer recuperation time. And then we noticed that a lot of the claims did require surgery. And the common thread among all of them is that we did have the medical and surgical treatment pre-certified as medically necessary. So these were cases where they were hurt, they needed that kind of treatment, increasing time loss and medical care. We look at the rise in post-retirement medical costs, which is pretty extensive. It's really a direct result of the 2007 charter change where we included the provision for post-retirement benefits, and the members are availing themselves of those benefits. So our next slide is a visual of the biweekly return to work, which is our wage subsidy, and monthly member disability benefit costs, comparing them from 2010 to 2014. Regarding the biweekly, which is the green line, shows an increase in disability costs. Again, we kind of talked about that on the other slide and identified a few common factors about those cases. There's a slight increase in our payouts in the return to work from 2012. That would be the yellow line. That's our wage subsidy program, where the bureaus are incented to get the members back to work to help with that, and we reimburse a portion of those wages to the bureaus. The monthly member, which is a red line, the monthly member disability cost shows a continued decline in disability cost over the past 5 years. The conversion to pension amounts probably for the majority of the decline, and the fact that we have not added new monthly benefit members to this scope, to this group of members. So medical savings, we like to report the medical savings that we receive each year, and there are a few factors that contribute to our overall medical savings. We experience a reduction in medical costs due to our network fee arrangements that allows Fpdr access to the Oregon fee schedule. We also receive savings above the fee schedule with our MHN contract, that's Managed Health Care Northwest. They're one of our MCOs. And then we experience additional savings now as a result of our in-house bill payers' ability to negotiate fees for members who live out of the state, who receive hospital services out of the state, or who seek treatment with our non-MCO providers. So we have an amount of savings of about $2.0 million, or 45% of the dollars billed this year, which is pretty good. So on the next slide, we give you a breakdown of the overall savings. At 45%, savings is broken down as follows. 36% is a result of our utilization of the Oregon fee schedule. 2% this year is an additional savings from our MHN network discount. And then we're pleased to report a 6% reduction this year, which is a result of our in-house claims technician negotiation of fee reductions. We didn't have that ability before. We brought that service in-house, and it's been really nice to have that expertise and ability to look at and negotiate additional savings for Fpdr. So our next slide is about the number of days to claim decision by fiscal year. This is an important one for us because we always are striving to decide the applications for benefits timely. So in fiscal year 2014, you'll note that we reduced the number of claims decided over 60 days from an average of 10% of our total claims to 6% of total claims. And this year, only 1% of the claims were decided over 90 days. This is an improvement in our efforts to reduce the number of days to claim decision, and as a result of prompt claims and investigation, evaluation, and decision-making on the claims. The next slide provides information about members whose service-connected and occupational disability payments converted from biweekly to monthly. And we're happy to report for the second year in a row that we've had no conversions from a biweekly to monthly benefit. And so we're proud of that. I'd like to give kudos to the fire and police bureaus and the liaisons for getting their employees back to work, and to the claim staff for really looking at and recognizing some of the serious injury cases where additional medical treatment, way of work hardening, and other things like that are utilized to make sure that our members are able to get back to work and perform the heavy demands of their jobs. So proud of that. And then the next slide is the pre and post charter reform disability information. We're comparing fiscal year 2006 to 2014. And we're looking at the percent of workforce on disability at June 30th. And if you look at 2006, it was almost 10% of the disability, percent of the workforce, I'm sorry, on disability as compared to 2014, which is slightly over 4%. Huge jump, and we're proud of those numbers. And then we have non-medical expense as a percent of covered payroll, which was at about 7% in 2006 and is almost 4% this year. So our goals in keeping with the mission statement is to continue to work on procedures and to ensure that benefits are delivered consistent with the charter and administrative rules while being compassionate and courteous to our members. We'd also like to utilize the disability audit findings to improve processes and enhance benefit delivery to our members. And continue outreach to our members is really important. We'd like to do that through advisories, informational pamphlets as needed, and continued liaison with our police and fire bureaus. That's all I have. Do you have any questions?
Questions?
I thought that stat on page 21 was fantastic. The reduction in percentage of people out on disability, and that's a win for everybody.
Yeah.
I don't remember in our prior benchmarks if that stat was included from other systems. Do you? It'd be really interesting to see how we compare. Tell Milliman to throw it in the report.
All right. All righty. We'll work on that.
That's great. So
Great, thank you. Nancy, you next.
All right, turning now to the pension program. As Sam mentioned earlier, we had a busy year in the pension program last year with 3 large projects. The pension overpayment recovery settlement was implemented in November, and overall we were able to recover about half of the amount net of attorney's fees that had been overpaid. The additional tax offset benefit was eliminated by Senate Bill 822 and made effective January 1 for both new and current retirees who are not subject to Oregon personal income tax. There will be an annual review of retirees' eligibility, and we're coming up on that in November. And then finally, the Fpdr 1 fire apparatus operator settlement was implemented in June. Our goals for the current year are to conduct a pension program audit. We'll be issuing the RFP in October and hope to contract with a successful proposer to begin work in early 2015. We'll be taking the Windsor ruling charter changes to council in the fall. In their Windsor decision, the U.S. Supreme Court struck down some provisions of the Defense of Marriage Act, specifically that regarded the definition of a spouse as a person of the opposite sex. And then finally, we'll be completing a plan summary document for members' use. This is not just a pension document. This will cover all 3 tiers, Fpdr 1, Fpdr 2, and Fpdr 3, and disability, pension, and death benefits in easier to use language than the charter. So I'll be working with the liaisons to roll this out to the membership by the end of this calendar year. These are the numbers for the pension program. Pension expense last year was almost 110 million, 104 million for the Fpdr 1 and 2 benefits, and $6 million for the OPSERP contributions for Fpdr 3 members. On average, pension benefits have grown by about 4% a year for the last 5 years. Fpdr 2 participants account for close to 80% of the current pension benefit expense and close to 70% of the number of members and survivors getting those benefits. Fpdr 3 members are now about a quarter of the active workforce. This slide compares Fpdr 2 and Fpdr 1 retirees. The chart on the left shows the percent of each tier's participants who are members. Because the Fpdr 2 participants are younger, 94% of Fpdr 2 retirees are members as opposed to survivors, whereas the Fpdr 1 participants are less than half members, so more than half are survivors now. The chart on the right compares the average benefit of Fpdr 2 members to the average benefit of Fpdr 1 members, and also compares average survivor benefits between the tiers. The average Fpdr 2 member benefit is close to 30% higher than the average Fpdr 1 benefit, but the Fpdr 1 survivor benefit on average is higher than the Fpdr 2 benefit. The reason for this is that so many of our members have selected the 25% minimum survivor benefit. We also have some goals for the Bureau's overall finances and administration. We are working with Milliman, our actuary, to ensure delivery of the 2014 actuarial valuation and levy adequacy analysis to you at the January meeting. As Sam mentioned, this will be the first valuation reported under the new Government Accounting Standards Board, Standard 67 on pension accounting. We'll also be working with the city, the accounting division, to assist with the implementation of GASB 68, which is the employer standard that's the companion to Standard 67, which is the plan standard, and will be implemented for us in our 2014 financial statements, which you'll see in a couple of months. These statements use the roll forward of the 2012 valuation using the new criteria, and what you'll see then in January is the 2014 valuation. We'll also be implementing our updated records retention schedule. Oregon revised statutes determine the retention requirements for public documents, and we want to be sure we are keeping the right records for the right period, but not longer. Any questions on pension or finance and administration?
Do you need to prepare us for sticker shock under the new GASB rules?
Not going to tell you. No, you do not need to prepare for sticker shock.
Thank you.
That's good. Great, thank you.
I have to do both. We'll see how I can do. I'm Sherry Miller, Senior Business Systems Analyst for Fpdr, and I will talk to you about what's been happening in technology. As Sam mentioned, we did install a new phone system. The goal was to improve customer experience. It's been in operation for almost 2 months, and we're already getting great feedback. So people are very pleased. They're happy that someone's actually answering the phone. We did discover a problem with our messaging system with the old phone system, and we have fixed that as well. So I think this was a great improvement. We also created some online fillable web member information forms. The 3 most used forms, the member change form, the change pension tax withholding form, and the change direct deposit form. Those 3 can be filled out online, but they do need to be printed, signed, scanned, emailed, or mailed and faxed. I mean, you've got all different ways that you can send them in. You can fill them out online, but at some point we will look at possibly online submission for those things. We are going to continue to look at converting additional forms where it makes sense to do so. We completed a migration to Office 365. It's a more up-to-date, it's a citywide migration effort, more up-to-date program with Word and Excel and all the apps that go with that. And I think we're pretty well along with learning how to use it and using the additional features. And we did complete some database enhancements through this last year. Most of them had to do with different kinds of processing, things that we do to make things a little bit more efficient and to validate data and that kind of stuff. So won't bore you with text talk there. So our goals for this year, Nancy mentioned records retention, so we're looking at transitioning to TRIM for some of our email, web document management, some other records that we need to keep. So I've been working with her on that. And we're going to continue to review the data reporting compatibility with City Risk. We did receive a demo of this Risk's new claim system. So we learned a little bit about what they do in their system, and then we're waiting the disability program audit to see if they have any findings before we actually make changes for comparability. And that report, I guess, is due out in January, and so at that time, if there's any technology needs there, we'll respond to their findings as necessary. We are going to explore the creation of a member web portal. This, again, will allow some online submission of some data. We would also look at some view capabilities for the member to view their current data, not only in the member area, but maybe some limited information in the claims area as well. And the city has community of interest groups that I know the mayor is aware of. So we have a say in the administrative and legislative group. Right now we are working on continuity of operations and disaster recovery issues, as well as data security, records management. Those are big issues right now in the city, and we are a part of that. I think that's it for my part.
Okay, for next year, a few things that are coming our way. As I mentioned before, Senate Bill 822 and 861, the Supreme Court decision. When that comes through, we're going to have to see how that impacts changes that we made in response to those. And there's some associated grievances that are sort of waiting for these court decisions to come down. So when all that happens, we will be coming back to you with a further discussion of the impact on FPDR. We've been working on our continuity of operations plan. We're working through a significant update to that plan. We're hoping to get a bulk of that done by the end of this year. We've been working with trying to feed the right information over into the BTS, our technology services continuity of operation plan, so that we can make sure they know what we need from a technical standpoint. The disability and pension audit reports will be coming through, and we'll be responding to them appropriately and taking any action that's needed. Along with Sherry, we're going to try to develop a technology 5-year vision for the Bureau. Where do we want to be in 5 years? What kind of technology do we want to be looking for? Fits right in line with a lot of the changes that BTS is making. So we'll try to piggyback on what their discussions are. We will be looking at trying to increase what I call a member portal, which is allowing members to do more directly with us online versus having to do a lot of the paper stuff. And then, as I had talked about in March, we're going to do a study of the disability claim filing timeliness. Look at the 30-day time frame, do some analysis, and make some recommendations to you all to see what kind of action, if any, that we want to take moving ahead.
Great.
That's our report here.
Great, nicely done. Questions for our team?
Well,
And I know you have some other folks queued up to
Yep.
speak here, so.
Okay.
No questions at this juncture? Okay,
none
thanks.
here. Crystal and Gabe.
Come on up, liaisons.
I'm gonna make you buy me whiskey.
Good afternoon.
Hi, my name's Gabe Sansone, Fire Bureau Liaison for FPDR.
I'm Crystal Bucala, Police Liaison for FPDR.
Well, I'll go first. I'd just like to say first, it's really been a pleasure and an honor. The chief said that the new liaison was going to be introduced, but it's actually been going on 2 years. But I guess time flies when you're having fun, so that's okay. So,
Pension systems have a long view. You know.
welcome. But I'd just like to welcome Crystal. I look forward to working together with her, as I did with Brett. And we've gotten together a few times and talked, and I think it's going to be great. Things are going well overall. From my perspective with FPDR, the staff is friendly. Everybody is just trying to do a good job, and when you put folks who are trying to do a good job together, you get a good result. We haven't had any new litigation in a couple years now, almost a couple years, and I think a lot of that is just making sure that the critical information is given to people in a timely fashion, and it just makes the problems go away from what I've seen. So well, the one thing I want to touch on is that I think that the Fire Bureau would like to do a better job of preventing injuries, and we're going to work with FPDR. We're going to have talks about that. We could get together at a future meeting if we want to look at it more in depth. But there is the next slide, which I don't know how to bring up. It's a mystery. Well, thanks. Yeah. Nope, not that one.
Okay, let's go down.
There we go.
There you go.
And this is just to share with you that this did exist. You approved a sum last year, you may recall, which was spent in a few different ways to help our folks become more healthy. It got some inherently safe exercise equipment, but body weight type stuff and some straps. It also did some training to our in-house folks, some experts, to keep them current. And then the remainder was spent on this program, which, as you can see, this is just a really brief, 30,000-foot look, but we did have some good preliminary numbers, about 10% less injuries working out in the station compared to people that weren't in it, which we're hoping, of course, this ran the same time as the fiscal year, so we're hoping to get continued results from it. That's all I have. Thank you.
I'm still learning and kind of learning what the processes are. So at this point, I just look forward to more continued communication between the Police Bureau and FPDR, and hopefully having a more proactive role in getting police officers help and seeing them through to retirement.
Thank you both for taking this on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and now I think we're going to have Mr. Ferschweiler, right, coming up. Mr. Turner.
Like to go first, Darrell, or me?
I'll go first. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Darrell Turner, Portland Police Association President. And I would like to first say I want some of that stuff fire gets, because they got a fitness instructor. We don't have one of those, so we need one of those. I'm sorry, Bob.
Just ask.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's unfortunate that we can't take advantage of these same programs, because I'll be honest with you, I think from my perspective, police officers really need this.
Yes,
and
they do.
It's a lifestyle change that not only makes them a better employee, but also makes them survive longer and be a happy employee.
Be happier and healthier.
Yeah.
So I would like to thank, number one, FPDR for helping out Paul Meyer. It was a good thing they did. It was a tough thing to do, and so they worked hard to get it done. And I want to say the PPA is thankful for that. So starting off, then I have to put my old man glasses on. I think it's important to note that FPDNR we have fewer denials than we've had in the past, and that's a positive note. In terms of our members, we would like to see a little bit more communication. We get a lot of questions from our members about FPDNR and how the process works, the reason for doing things like recorded interviews, the reason for someone having to go to an IME, generally those type of questions, the reason why FPDNR is investigating a claim, and why FPDNR is contacting their doctors. Those are just things that our members need to know and don't probably have a clear understanding of, and a lot of times we get those questions ourselves at the PPA, and we do explain them. We have an FPDNR attorney, Julie Fallender, which I'm sure most of you have met or know, and So, but I think better communication, clearer communication will help us out a lot, so that our members are not confused about the process, so that they can also be involved in the process in an easier way, and so that they can make sure that their claims are put in time, or in a timely manner, in a complete manner, so that when their claims are processed, they're processed with all the information that FPDNR staff needs to be able to make a good determination based on that information. So, and I think that's the biggest thing for us is communication with our membership, so that they can do a better job on their claims, and also so that they can give all the information to FPDNR that they need to process those claims. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. And actually, you're one of the reasons I'm going to talk right now. And I'll start off with the injuries. And I know that we brought, that's one of the slides up there and one of the concerns of the board. I'll go over some of the quick injuries that we had over the last year. And I think those are probably non-preventable. One of my vice presidents, he was working at a fire out in Southeast late at night, went into a mud puddle that was a lot deeper than he was, rolled his ankle. We had one of the guys that I work over here at Station 4. Door opens, a life pack comes out of the drawer on a medical call, and he goes and grabs it, and his shoulder goes with it. We have claims that are like that even though we can work out and we can work those shoulders, I think for the nature of our job, we know that a lot of those, even though we try and prevent them, by the nature, they aren't all preventable. Some of the comments that were made, I think that as we look at the slide in the 2007 versus the 2014, I think I'd be remiss to say that some of the changes that the board implemented in the charter change is not a reason for those numbers to go down. I'd also be remiss to put in that, we are a decreasing age in our bureau. And so the amount of people that need reading glasses right now in the Fire Bureau has gone down since 2007. And you see every PERS member that you guys have employed in the Fire Bureau, 165, they're younger, they're in their 30s, they're in their 20s. And so the likelihood of them getting injuries are less. And really the slide that really pointed out a lot is when you look at the number of long-term injuries that are over a year, we've decreased that to 0. That's the Fire Bureau, that's the Police Bureau, that's the city, that's FPDNR, and everybody working together, where our injuries might be up, but they're short-term and not long-term, which I think is a big success. Some of the other things that were there is that I think you'll see that the number of back injuries are definitely up. We are seeing a lot of patients that result in back injuries where we're picking them up. The Bureau is tracking that information, and now we are doing some operational changes that will help on that. And so some of the two-man rescues that we have, the dispatcher is now keyed to say, how much does a patient weigh? If they weigh over 200 pounds, that two-person vehicle is no longer allowed to go on those calls. Now that requires a 4-person engine to go. So some of those things in the implement of those programs as they go down is going to have a decrease on those rates. I think that the one thing that I would love to see our Bureau do better is we did actually reduce the pure fitness training program that we did have in place. And so back when I came into the Bureau, we had trainers that would come out to the station and they would come and work with us, work on our core strength and different stuff like that. Now, Gabe got an excellent program that helped our members. I think we can go a lot farther in presenting those injuries, especially the backs, the shoulders, that we can work on our core strength. And it is what it is. When you have somebody there helping you work out and having you exercise, you're going to do the exercise more correctly, and I believe you're going to see the injuries even go down farther. When you look at the past year, especially legally, I think that the FPDNR is, we've settled the apparatus operator payment, the overpayment is done. The biggest thing, and I understand some of your comments, Mr. Delaney, on the bargainability and the legal situation that we have. I think that it's important to look at what we have legally is a lot done before at least I got here and Mayor Hales got here. Charter change was done in 2012. The alternate payee was done in 2009. The PERS changes, those were outside influences that implemented that outside of us. So I know that this is going to be a larger year for some of the legal stuff that we have going on, but I really feel that a lot of those were outside influences bearing down on at least the people that are sitting right here. And lastly, I think that the wrap up of this is, since I became union president, I think that the board and specifically staff of FPDNR have been very much a partner with not just me, but with the members that I represent. And I'll just give you a quick examples, even just making executive session the last thing that you guys do so that we don't have to sit in a hallway for an hour and then come back in for 5 minutes and watch you gavel down. There was one of the issues that we have is a small issue with independent medical examiners, and Sam welcomed me and Nelson Hall into his office to be able to discuss those. Even looking at the rules making changes, it was a long process, but the process got to a point where you didn't have anybody testify today. And those are all things where we're moving, that everybody's working together, and I think staff specifically has gotten to a point where we are working strong together. So Sam and your staff, thank you. And Gabe Sansone, I got to tell you, he is, in terms of the communication, he has been probably one of the stronger communicators out in our position. And one of the reasons that I believe we don't have as many denials is because Gabe is out there making sure everybody gets them in time, and you don't have anything that's over 35 days late or 45 days late. And he's really working them to make sure that they're doing it correctly and it's not a process problem. So that was the end of my comments, and I would answer any questions if you had any.
That's great. Good points. Thank you both.
Not a question, but same offer to the two of you. No bad ideas in my book as far as strength and agility training and preventing injuries. So send them to Sam. Doesn't matter who it comes from. We'll consider things as they come in.
Yeah, I think it's something we should be
Good
doing
for
more.
everybody. Yeah, absolutely.
It is, and I think me and Daryl's goal is to have our members that are walking out in retirement being able to enjoy retirement.
Saw that good new weightlifting equipment out at the police training center, and that was a good purchase. So
Yes.
we want to make sure people have time and opportunity to use it, and that it's available wherever they work. So
Can't help you with your old man glasses.
Most things I don't want to see anyway.
Thank you. Good to see you guys.
thank you, Pat.
Okay, give me a quick second to back out, because I do have a... Yeah, if you want to. Okay, if you want to.
Okay. Del, you want to testify on this too?
Del Stevens, retired firefighter. I'm not exactly sure what state of FPDNR was referring to, but it was the public comments. Is that appropriate at this stage, public comments? Or is that coming later?
No, we had that earlier in the agenda, but if you have a general comment about the condition of FPDNR, this would be a good time to make it, because that's what this report was about.
Okay, my comments about FPDNR is that I think we have reason to be very proud of our police department and our fire department. I think they're staffed by qualified, caring people, and I think the city, by large, is very, very responsible and supportive of the members. And I think that there's a long history behind that. It didn't just happen overnight. And as a retired member, I feel like I was part of that process, and I look forward to the future being better also. But I think we also need to be alert to possibilities for change, for improvements, for good ideas. And I have some of those ideas. If the forum was available for me to present them, it seems like that we have kind of an awkward relationship. You can make a public comment at the start of the meeting if you're called upon to do so, but that's your last opportunity. And it doesn't allow for any discussion or any input, any comments from interested observers, knowledgeable observers about the process, about the business that was conducted. For instance, at the May meeting, it was announced that there's going to be a 3-month cancellation of meetings. There was no rationale for that I could understand. There's an Oregon public meeting law that talks about the responsibility of public agencies to have meetings. And I think 3 months does not fall into the guidelines for that. And people that have information to present or claims or issues that are ongoing, 3 months is a huge interruption. And I don't understand the reason why we would go 3 months. The other thing is, think we need to pursue opportunities for saving money, but not at the expense of individuals. I think individuals deserve the best support and the best care they can get. And I'm interested in seeing that process advance. And I hope that the board is open to looking at possibilities of not only being fiscally conservative and responsible, but providing better benefits. And it goes back again to the possibility of a tax-protected disability system. And apparently nobody wants to look at it further. I don't quite understand that. To me, it's a clear win-win for both sides. And I would hope that somebody would want to say, well, let's look at it. Let's investigate it. Let's see if there's applications that we can benefit from. Anyway, that would be my comment about the state of the FPDNR. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. You got something queued up here ready for us? Okay.
Okay, thank you. I just had a little follow-on presentation here after the state of FPDNR, and I've entitled it, As the World Turns, So Does FPDNR. FPDR is uniquely unique. It's the only program or only retirement system with this kind of funding pay-as-you-go. Every other fund has an asset management funds like PERS does, where people contribute, make contributions into the system, and you manage those assets to design that you'll have enough assets to pay off the retirement benefits. And one of the things as I talk with people about FPDNR and look at how people deal with FPDNR, I find it's easy to get comfortable in our niche because we are so uniquely unique that we begin to look at our world only through FPDNR. But there's a larger world environment out there that does have impact or may have impact on FPDNR. And I think events are going to continue to happen that will influence FPDNR. So today, I want to go through and bring up some of those issues because I think it's our responsibility as a board and the FPDR management team to keep an eye on what's happening around in the world and be aware of issues that could impact FPDNR. Next slide is a disclaimer. This is solely my comments, doesn't represent anybody, doesn't represent any of my staff, so if I stick my foot in it, it's solely my foot in my mouth and my opinions, so that's just what that is.
Fair enough.
So the next one are taxes. Taxes are our lifeline. Property tax is our lifeline. That's the sole method of our funding here. It's the only way that we can fund our pension, our survivor, and disability benefits, as well as the PERS contributions for FPDNR 3 members. So there's quite a few things. There's right now you see in the state of Oregon a lot of tax frustration and tax fatigue, and then the issue part of that specifically is tax compression. I mean, every year you hear about the kicker. Should we keep it? Should we get rid of it? Should we spend it? Should we abolish it? A lot of issues there. Income tax, a lot of complaints that we have over-reliance on it as a state, so it creates some unusual funding problems. The property tax has been vilified a lot lately. The City Club called it a Franken tax. We've heard a lot of issues about it being the inequity in its assessment, the issue of tax compression, the feeling that a lot of municipalities and schools who have passed a tax levy to find out that they don't get the full amount that they had thought they would, so they can't fund all the programs that they intended to with the levy. And for tax fatigue too, also I think even in the city of Portland, which tends to be a more tax-friendly city, you're beginning to see some fatigue and some pushback on particular fees and taxes that have been proposed by the city. So I think it's an issue even in Portland, it's becoming there. And so when you talk about specifically property tax compression, just to explain how I view it. So when you have a property tax, you have a piece of a pie. So this is all that you can get out of your property tax is what's in this pie. Every agency or municipality that has a property tax gets a wedge out of that pie. If there's not enough pie going around, you have to compress everybody or make everybody's piece smaller. The FPDNR is unique is that we tend to be compression proof. The way we've established our levy, and our levy is going to have to increase as our pension obligation increases. You'll see more about that in January. So our piece of the pie will continue to get bigger, which exacerbates the compression of everybody else who takes a piece out of that pie. So that creates some issues right now. So the next one, tax reform, that brings you up, down to tax reform. Governor Kitzhaber said, about a year or so ago, he wanted to look at tax reform, especially income tax and sales tax. But I don't think you can look at tax reform without touching on a property tax either. So I think you originally wanted to come up with another grand bargain on how to restructure or reform the state's taxes. But I've been seeing some articles now as the economy's picking up, the urgency by a lot of the citizens as well as other legislatures to do this is dropping. And there's a whole lot of issues when you do tax reform. There's going to be winners and there's going to be losers. From our standpoint is, and you'll see a little bit more, is we could be a loser if property taxes are messed with in certain ways. It will be a challenge to make any reforms. You're going to have to get both sides of the legislature, get the Democrats and the Republicans to agree with it. And ultimately, you're going to have to get the voters to buy into it, especially if you put a sales tax out there. I don't think you're going to get one through. So, I think there was a couple editorials in the Oregonian, one on Sunday, again, talking about the taxes coming through. So it's an issue that we need to be looking for. So how will the discussion on taxes impact us? My biggest fear is that worst case scenario, and I mean this is worst case, somebody's going to monkey with the property tax and make it harder for us to levy a property tax or put further restrictions on the amount that we can do, and that will impact our funding. So I'll be watching as this moves through the next legislature, what happens with it, and is somebody going to inadvertently do something crazy that's going to impact us going forward? And the next big issue is to watch pension reform. It's still happening across the country. I think there's a lull in Oregon. We had 822 and 861. It's sort of parked with it, but there's a lot of things happening across the country. Article that came out in last week describing that 2 or 3 states are at actually 100% funding. State of Washington is, I think, at 95% funding, but then you've got several states that are down to 40 to 50% funding on their state pension plans. So it's huge out there. There's a lot of local pension plans that are in trouble going through, and so there's a lot of action items that you're seeing out there with their plan designs as you're seeing move away from the defined benefit program and to a defined contribution or some combination thereof. Those kind of changes help for the future but don't help for the present liabilities. You're seeing reduction in benefits, including retiree benefits. COLAs is a big one they're going after, but there are some programs that are actually reducing retirees' funds to go through. Definitely increases in member and employee contributions is happening across the country, and a lot of jurisdictions are increasing taxes all to make up on these funds. You still have the bankruptcies in progress. The biggest one is Detroit. They're actually getting pretty close to a resolution, and so the huge draconian fears that were going to happen to the pension plan are not materializing. They're still impacting the pension program, but they've done a fairly decent job of shielding it from being decimated with it. And I think the last couple holdout creditors are finally beginning to buy into the plan. Businesses and civic leaders have. So it appears to have been done a pretty good job of protecting the city as well as their pension plans. You have the city of Stockton who's looking to declare bankruptcy. The interesting thing with them, their pension plan is CalPERS. And so if they elect to either reduce their benefit or not pay the past due, what's CalPERS going to do about it? Because they're going to have to charge other municipalities more money to make up for what Stockton can't pay. So obviously CalPERS is against bankruptcy. But there's several other California cities that are anxiously watching this that may follow in suit with bankruptcy. And there's other bankruptcies throughout the country that are pending, waiting to see how they can deal with their pension, because that's usually one of their biggest costs. You even have some states right now that are deciding they're not going to make the required contributions. I think New Jersey said they're going to increase their contributions but still not go up to their statutory level that they have to be at for their contributions. So it's further going to drag out their pension issues. You see a lot of cases where a lot of these funds are working with labor to get buy-in to the changes. Sometimes they're not, and so you're seeing court challenges. So it's still all the stuff that we've gone through, it's still happening out there. Oregon has been actually working on this problem for 10 years. It was the revision, I think the one in 2003 that created OPSRP, the Tier 3, and some other changes going through with it. And then we had 822 and 861 this year. So I think we've sort of, I'm not saying we're at a perfect solution, but we've gone through some of the issues that many of them are going through right now to deal with it. Interesting is if 822 and 861 are overturned in their entirety, the governor says he's not going to revisit the issue, and I think his grand bargain may dissolve, and what he was trying to prevent was a free-for-all in the legislature of both sides throwing issues about high increased taxes, blocking the unions, et cetera. That may come up, so that'll be some interesting things that could go in the legislature if those two are down and there isn't a follow-up action plan to try to deal with the fallout from that. And so all the changes that happened with 822 and 861, I don't know how that's going to impact FPDR, so we'll have to keep an eye out with it. Another thing that's coming in with pension is, this is a scary figure. We're 99.4% underfunded. If you notice, I have an apple and an orange on the bottom. We are an apple because we are a pay-as-you-go plan and have a dedicated tax levy that pays our plan and keeps us whole. Every other plan is an orange, which meaning they have an asset management fund. So if you look at us from an orange, we are considered 99.4% underfunded. That creates a lot of attention. And that amount amounts to approximately $3 billion in underfunding. GASB 68, you'll hear more about that coming up later, but it changes and may make this more visible. And I'm not going to go into a lot of the details with it, but those are some of the changes that are happening. Our plan, pay-as-you-go, befuddles regulators, befuddles rating agencies, and befuddles researchers. They just can't understand what's going on with it or how to deal with this. We had to spend a lot of time with Moody's explaining how we worked, and apparently our story worked and that we kept the city's bond ratings. But that was a lot of work, and it was not a unanimous decision at Moody's to view us as an apple. They all wanted to be, some of them want to still view us as an orange. So the next slide here is, you go along with this, there's a lot of people looking at pensions right now, and it's at different levels. So you have the IRS, they're constantly looking at it. They're the only ones who basically regulate public pensions. And so they want to make sure that every public pension is managed appropriately and keeps their tax status. There's an article I just ran across here. Apparently there's some rules that the IRS has been working on to define normal retirement ages, age 62 or later, or age 50 for safety officers or later. That doesn't impact us, but that may impact other public pensions that allow people to retire before age 62. Doesn't say how it impacts them, but given the gist of the article, it's not going to be a good way to impact some of these pension plans. So these are, again, a sample of things that we need to be keeping our eye on as they work their way through. U.S. Department of Treasury said they're now going to get into the fray and start evaluating public pensions. Already talked about Moody's. ASB, which is the Actuarial Standards Board, they're now going to start evaluating with new standards for valuing public pensions. GASB, we've talked about. ERISA and Public Pension Benefit Guarantee Corp all look at private pensions, but people who manage and regulate public pensions look to these two entities for guidance on how public pensions should be managed. ERISA is the most comprehensive pension law in the world, and so it sets the bar for how all pensions should be managed, and so you'll see a lot of people look to it for public pension guidance. Pew Research Center is the one that came out and said City of Portland is in the bottom 5 cities of their funding of their public pension program. FPDR was the sole cause of that low because they were looking at FPDR as an orange. We've gotten them to mention there's an apple we've got them there's a little apple in a footnote about us now, so we've been able to try to get that worked with them. Ron Wyden on the Senate Finance Committee wants to look into it and making sure that pensions are properly supported, including public pensions. So you see all these agencies are continuing to look at us, and we have to be aware of what's going to happen. And my biggest fear is they're going to start applying that we're going to be an orange and be treated like an orange, and that may mean we have to do certain things that we don't agree with or that could be detrimental to our plan. So as I mentioned, 822 and 861 decisions could lead to higher future liabilities because, again, we saw some reduction in our liabilities because of those two lower COLAs and the tax offset. aren't there, we'd have to pay them, so they'll increase our liabilities. And also can increase, we'll have to do a retroactive cash payout probably to bring everybody back up as if they weren't there. So we'll have to keep an eye on, see how that does. The next one is, here's basically, agencies will bring attention to FPDR's funding and how unique it is. Again, they're going to say, hey, here's how an orange should be looking at. You're not an orange, and so we're going to be seeing more of it coming out. And you go, so what? Well, it just brings more heat to the city to try to explain why we're different, why we don't have this plan funded, why the $3 billion isn't scary because of the tax levies is where we're going to get those funds. It could also invite more scrutiny from legislatures or regulators simply because you're not an apple. You need to look like an orange. I mean, you're not an orange. You need to look like it. We're going to continue to work on telling our story. We've been very good at it. I'd like to thank Nancy and her staff as well as our investment staff here in the city have done a very good job of doing that. But at some point, I'm afraid somebody will quit listening. And this is the same issue here. I think my risk is that at some point, people are going to quit listening to our story, and we could, in a worst-case scenario, be forced to do something that wouldn't be beneficial to the plan with that. Okay, the next step is workers' compensation. So there's a lot of trends and issues going around in workers' comp out there, even though, again, we are sort of self-administered or have our own defined plan. It's things that we look at. Consolidation in the private sector is big because it's a mature industry. So how they assure that they can continue to gain market share, gain efficiency and profit is through acquisition and mergers. You're seeing a big wave of that over the past 6 to 12 months, both as far as insurers and TPAs. You're seeing state opt-out options. You have the Texas model, which is very Texan, and nobody's really looking at it because it's so way out there. You have the Oklahoma model, which quite a few states like. It does retain a lot of the protections to employers and protections to workers that the Texas plan does not. So you may see as Oklahoma settles in, other states moving that direction. And then there was just an article that came out a few days ago. Walmart, Safeway, Nordstrom, and other large companies are trying to get a federal opt-out option on workers' comp, too. So you maybe see opt-out options coming around. I have opioid use. This is the big wave right now, one of the biggest cost drivers on the medical side in disability or workers' compensation claims. It's so easy to write a script for opioids. You get somebody hooked on opioids. It just drives your costs up because it does not give you a result. It just hooks people on drugs and they still stay off and they don't improve. The ACA, the Affordable Care Act, I'll talk a little bit later about that impact. Marijuana, big fun one. We are one of the few states that has approved medical marijuana, but there's little guidance on how workers' compensation should handle medical marijuana. How should we pay for it? It's not a prescription drug because the feds say it's not, so it's a medicine, so how do you manage that? What does it do? Then the possibility of Oregon approving recreational use for marijuana further complicates potentially how you do it. One of the, we have an article here that came out in Portland Business Bureau a few weeks that talks about pain management, which is opioids, a lot of it, how opioids are making it tough for people to return to work, and it's not a good way of managing pain. Interesting, on one side is you're seeing medical marijuana as being a choice to replace opioids because it's a lot safer and actually has better results at managing long-term pain. But again, we have no guidance on how we are supposed to move ahead with medical marijuana. So we flip over to the next one. So part of the consolidation, what's that going to do to us? When industry goes through consolidation, they have a lot of what I call support vendors. In our case, it's managed care organizations, vocational rehab firms, return to work vendors, nurse case managers. They all help companies manage their workers' compensation claims. So is this the future workers' compensation, meaning these companies, larger companies, are going to suck these resources in-house? If they do, we're going to have fewer vendors to draw from, and they're going to probably be lower quality, and they're probably going to be higher cost. On the other hand, sometimes when companies get more efficient, they outsource more work. That would be to our advantage because you would see a lot more vendors. You'd probably see lower costs, and you'd also see a higher quality of work. So that's something as you have to look around. So what's going to happen, with SAFE and Liberty Northwest here locally? What are they going to do? Are we going to have more vendors available to us or not? We're not big enough to bring these services in-house, so we rely heavily on some of these vendors. Also, another side thing is that they may have some improved claim management practices. You get more effective and efficient to manage claims, not managing in the sense of closing them, but manage them better, able to bring people to a result, which is either returning to work or better health with that quicker. So the other one we talked about was, I already went over this a little bit, opioid prescription. You're seeing a lot of, the new wave on this is to require before opioids are prescribed is to have a doctor come up with a care plan, a pain management plan, which opioids can be part of, but the member also has to buy in and sign into this plan. So I think you're going to get away from people just, workers' comp carriers, just blindly reimbursing opioids without having a care plan, forcing doctors to realize there's more to managing pain. Again, this article for really high level has a very good high level overview of some of the options that you can do other than managing pain. Because opioids, what they do is just numb you from the pain, and you live your whole life numbed, and then you get so dependent upon it, and you can't work, you can't even get productive in your own house or in your own neighborhood anymore. So that's the downside of the opioids. Our MCOs are beginning to adopt these protocols. Kim and I are going to be monitoring and making sure that we do move ahead with that. Again, back to marijuana, little guidance on how from workers' comp. Interestingly, the two states that have the most guidance for workers' comp are the two that have approved recreational marijuana. Colorado made it simple in saying workers' comp will not pay for marijuana, period. Washington, on the other hand, is saying that you come up with a care plan for marijuana, how you're going to use it, very similar to the opioid care plan, how it's going to be used, how much it's going to be used, how the member's going to respond to it, how they're going to measure results with it. So again, Kim and I are looking at this, trying to research different ways of how this will impact us going forward as medical marijuana picks up steam and probably high probability recreational marijuana will be approved. So we've got to figure out how we deal with this before we can get inundated with claims. I'm not certain that we haven't had any at this point, but I think it's just a matter of time. Okay, just a real quick on a few other things. Affordable Care Act. The theory behind the Affordable Care Act is that it should drive workers' compensation costs down, simply because you will have people that have access to a physician that did not, so they will likely go see their regular physician versus try to figure out some way to make their medical condition a work-related condition. Also, if they're seeing a doctor on a regular basis, they should be healthier and less likely to have an injury at work. I'm not certain we're going to see much of an advantage from it because our members have had access to good medical care for decades. So we're not going to, they're not going to see a radical change in the medical care. So I don't think it will have us. We're going to have to watch it though, because I'm certain the Affordable Care Act will undergo changes over with the next president coming through. And even though workers' comp is excluded, it depends on how somebody can slip something in that may tie workers' comp to the act, and we'll have to monitor what that is. Then you have aging workforce. You've heard bits and pieces of that today. The older members that we have, you see more claims, and as Kim was showing, there are more claims, they're more expensive claims going forward. I don't think we're going to see a huge impact with Fpdr 2 level because there's not an incentive for them to work beyond 30 years. The way our plan is structured, they don't get credit for more than 30 years of work. So anytime they work beyond 30 years, it doesn't really increase their retirement benefit. However, you may see it with Fpdr 3 because they're in the PERS plan. Their retirement age is age 60, not 55. So you're automatically getting an older time. Or it's age 53 with 25 years of service, so they're going to be older. So there's some risk there, both from the bureaus are going to see older staff members or firefighters and police officers, and we may see more claims from them going forward. So the changing look of Fpdr, what we're going to look like at. So here's a picture today. We have 1,400 retirees. We have about 1,200 active Fpdr 2 members. They're firefighters and police officers, and about 400 of them are Fpdr 3. So you move out 10 more years, and you're going to see you're going to have more Fpdr 3 members than Fpdr 2. And what that means is we'll see more Fpdr 3 members holding officer and management positions in the bureaus as well as the unions, and potentially one or both of the positions on the board as we go forward. And then in 20 years, the retirees are going to jump up. We're going to see about 500 more retirees. At that time, you're going to see very few FPDR2 members, and it's going to be predominantly FPDR3 members. So they're going to hold all the positions on the board, in their bureaus and in the union. You'll also see, in about this time, this is the point to where pension costs will start declining as a plan, because we'll be going from there. So how's all this going to impact us? Well, first of all, you're going to have FPDR3 members only going to look to FPDR as a workers' compensation provider. We won't do their pension, so they'll be going down to Salem for any pension issues. So the issues that they bring up will solely be on the compensation side. And then the last question I'm answering with a question is, who's going to represent the FPDR retirees in the future? Somewhat the argument has been that the two of you, Bob and Jason, have some representation simply because you could be retiring in the future, so you do care about what's happening in retirement. But when everybody on the board does not look to FPDR as a retirement carrier, who looks out for the retirees? And this is not a new question. I've seen this floated around in meeting minutes for the past 5 to 10 years anyway. So again, to recap, why is this all important? Because I said at the start, FPDR is uniquely unique. And we need to be careful that we don't get so focused on our niche in the world that we ignore everything that's happening outside. I went through several examples here of things that were happening that could inadvertently impact us. We could be looked at as an orange, and that can have a huge impact on us. A lot of things happening in the workers' comp area that we've got to be attuned to of what's going on there. And so our goals at FPDR Board of Trustees and FPDR management is to ensure that we as a bureau, or we as a fund, can continue to pay benefits to our members as described in the city charter going forward. So we have to be aware of anything that could impact our ability to do that.
Great report.
Yep.
Comments? Questions? Yeah, good look at the big picture, Sam. I think the other hopeful sign I would mention in terms of all those sort of outside trends is that thanks to the rate of real estate development here in the city, the tax base is growing faster than public budgets, and that's not always been the case. And then secondly, the work we've undertaken to try to reduce the impact of urban renewal on our own tax base and others is starting to pay off, albeit modestly, in public budgets as well. It doesn't directly affect, that only indirectly affects the FPDR levy because it's above and beyond that compression issue. But to the extent that we ameliorate compression with AV growth and reducing the take of PDC from the property tax resource, I think it will help preserve the system that we operate under for local services. So I think those are positive trends. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we have one more, I think, item on your agenda, which is the IRS determination.
Just a few quick things to run through with the IRS. So this is a really good notice. Our tax qualification has been approved for another 5 years by the IRS. So that's nice to have, and that's behind us on it, because that's pretty onerous. And thanks, Lauren, over there, for doing all the work for making that happen with that. So just I'll walk through the last final points here. So the FPDR updates, we've talked about the disability audit, so the on-site work for that is complete. We expect to see a first draft of their plan in the next couple of weeks. We will presenting you the findings. Millman will present their findings in January. We will then follow up with our reply on our plan of action from there. As Nancy said, we're going to post the pension audit RFP here on October 22nd, so we're moving ahead on that. So that's probably about 2 or 3 months quicker than I had initially planned, which is good. One thing is that we have some board, go through changes because Justin is technically up due at the end of this year for all the board terms, and both Bob and Jason, you are up at the end of next year. And one thing that we don't have is a board training manual, so I'm going to be reaching out to all of you to talk about what you would have liked to have seen, what help you would have liked to have gotten when you came on board. We need to get a manual put in place. We actually need a board manual anyway, because we don't have one. So I'm starting work on that. So just give you all notice that I'll be talking with you and asking that question. What?
To learn on the job, so does the next.
Pass on the misery, man.
One of the things we have, we're going to be submitting an ordinance, we just dropped off in your office, Mayor Hales, for a contract that we had just discovered we are about ready to exceed the maximum amount on the contract. Now, and I'll give you some background on the contract. It's for MHN, which Kim had shown you. They helped us save a few percent on our bills. And the kind of contract we have with them is they can go out and negotiate lower rates on our behalf. And so we have to pay less for certain types of medical services, and they've added more and more to the list of things they can save us. And now it's some hospital expenses. And what we do, for every $2 they save, $1 comes back into our bottom line and $1 goes to them. So we get half of the savings. So the interesting thing is that we said we capped it at 40,000. Well, they're doing such a good job. We're about ready to exceed the 40,000 cap on it. We want to keep using them to save money. So we need to raise the cap, which requires an ordinance from the city council. I apologize, we weren't prepared for you because it came up pretty quickly that we notified that we did. So we'll share this with you in more detail in November. So it's one of those things, is the more money we pay them, it's the more money they save us. So it's not, so every dollar we pay out for them, we also get $1 back into our bottom line in the budget. So we're moving ahead with that real quick because we're about ready to hit that limit. So we need to get approval for the end of this year, and we're going to raise the cap for next year, and then at the end of 2015, we'll renew or go out to bid for that contract again. So again, I apologize for it, but again, you saw the numbers that Kim had shown you, and they are definitely offering a good service. And the fact is that.
But you've got staff members now that are doing that also.
Also, but our staff member tends to do the ones, and Kim, for the ones that are out of
I guess
plan
one
and
question
out of
is,
state.
could we get to the point where it is all in-house and we don't have to give away 50% of our savings?
We could potentially look at that when this contract ends at 2015. We're barely a year and a half into the in-house plan, and we're looking at that. And if we can expand that, that's great. We also only have one person in-house, and we got lucky. We got a very experienced person to take that position. Should she leave and we not replace somebody that experience, we will probably see the savings that position gets us drop. So it's a good question. I think we'll look into that when this contract is up, but I would like to continue this contract through 2015 and just up the limit. We are definitely seeing a savings, and good question.
Okay.
So that's our updates on it, and I think we have two more things on the list here. One is future meeting agenda. November is just general business. We've added one, so one will come back with a rule on pre-existing income and get that well written for you, and hope we'll close that out. And we may have some other items. We don't have anything active on the list right now. And then in January, this is where we'll go over the fiscal components. We have our budget approval, the financial audit results for the fund, the valuation and levy adequacy analysis will be presented to you at that time, as well as the disability audit results and our response going through. And then the last here on the Fpdr funds. So these are the funds, the expenses, the very last page in your notebook for the 4 months since the last meeting. And Jason, going forward, will make sure you get this on a monthly basis, either at a board meeting or through email for non-board meeting months.
And do we have the date of that November meeting set?
Next meeting?
Should be the Wednesday or the Tuesday of the week before Thanksgiving, so it's like.
That would be the 18th then?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Here it is. Yep, it's there. I see
Okay.
it.
Supposed to be
Yep.
the
Yep.
fourth
It's
Tuesday.
usually the 4th, except for Thanksgiving. We move it up 1 week ahead, so we're not in the week of Thanksgiving.
Yep, okay, I see it.
We're going to do it on the 18th.
18th.
Yeah, yeah.
Already scheduled.
Yeah.
Because that was on the list that we had, so it should be scheduled. Probably in November, we'll give you the recommended meeting schedule for 2015.
All
Am I
right.
still a valid trustee in November, or do I get out of that meeting?
All the way through December 31, until we can hog tie you.
Two
and-
questions there.
Valid.
It's been fun. Schedule a couple extra meetings.
Might be late to that meeting. You really want some.
You would.
All right.
Unless there's any other
Great.
questions.
Anything else to come
Tom?
before the board? If not, then thanks, Sam and staff, for great reports today and good meeting.
Yeah, good
We
meeting.
are adjourned until November 18th. That's right, you can see the light at the end of the tunnel.